Hello YouTube, I'm Peter Moylan. I'm an ordinary citizen and I came along here tonight hoping to get some information, and I got some useful information anyway. One good thing I learned tonight is that if we're very unhappy in the EU at some stage down the line, we can actually leave. So that's something that's kind of relatively reassuring, because I thought all these treaties were just one way, we get further and further involved. The one thing that I always notice that comes out of these things, and it's always used to sell these treaties, is an economic argument. And I actually am one of the people that actually think that it's not as clear-cut as everyone might think, that being in the whole EEC European thing has been so clearly, overwhelmingly financially good for Ireland. And the reason I state that is, till about the early 90s, we actually got about 20 billion in resources, mainly through farming and that from the EU. We actually had 1 in 5 officially unemployed, and yet it's talked like from the moment we went into the EEC there was this instantaneous success, prosperity and all of that. I actually trace our prosperity in the EU down to one thing, a decision made by the German central bank around the time of German unification. There was mass currency speculation by people like George Soros and that, and several currencies, including the British pound, had been forced out of the forerunner of the euro. Ireland were kind of a small country, and they used a huge amount of their foreign currency reserves to actually remain within this kind of forerunner. I forget what it was called. It was kind of EMU was what it was called. And the reality is we hadn't the resources to stay out of it. So the currency speculators attacked us, and we turned round to the Germans and to the other countries that were in the EMU system, and we said, we can't hold the line here. Can Germany, or the main country that was underpinning it with the Deutschmark at the time, can you not cut your interest rate in order to sort of help us stop all this speculation, because we can't sustain it? And I always remember Hans Tietmeyer was the name of the guy, and he just said, like, you're 3 or 4 million people. We have to look after German unification and the inflationary effects of giving 1 German mark for 1 East German mark, and you're just too small for us to worry about, so we're not going to be able to cut our rate. Sorry about that. So much for the great European ideal. The ironic thing is that actually Europe not standing faith with us and turning their back at us was the key to our prosperity, because almost immediately the Irish government had to devalue the currency by 12%. So all of a sudden we had English-speaking, well-educated workforce, 12% cheaper, and they were all relatively low paid, and at the same time there was only 9 countries in the EEC, and with that they allowed us to have the lowest corporate tax rates. So why wouldn't every foreign direct investment which came up tonight, it's so important that we keep voting for these treaties? But the reality is they came here because we had the lowest taxes and the cheapest workers, and by and large they have remained in or around, but some are leaving. So it's interesting that we're being encouraged to vote for a treaty on an economic basis, but the reality is that most of the actual jobs, or some of the easier, more labour-intensive ones, they're actually beginning to leave. We're now a high-cost economy, and yet that's used as a selling point. The real truth is, I see a scenario for us down the line whereby, as Europe will eventually dismantle the low corporate tax rate that we have, most of the companies, the American companies, will actually leave and move to the middle of Europe, which would be Poland, Austria, Czechoslovakia, to be at the centre of it. It's a bit like what's happening with the Eurovision. You know, we're really on the periphery, folks, and Dustin is our last hope. If Dustin doesn't create some kind of effect out in the Eurovision at current time, we can take it that we have no influence out there, that no one even knows where we are, and it'll be the same economically. In a high oil costing environment, and oil rises and will probably never fall again, why would you locate on a small island that will basically have the same corporate tax rate as everyone else, and a high costly kind of workforce, and that I just can't see it. And I don't see that there's a lot of other activity going on here, because we really don't have the weather for tourism. We sold out our fishing, and farming, we're a price taker. And I actually wonder how all these IBEC guys and the big salaries think that we're so economically prosperous as a result of being in Europe, when in fact I can see a scenario in 10 or 15 years we'll be screaming to get out of the EU, because we'll have felt that we'll be almost entrapped by the laws of that, and there won't be any companies here. And really look around it. If you take away the building, what has been going on for the last 5 or 6 years with the Celtic Tiger, say Mark II? The reality is that all we're doing is finance money being given out to Irish people to buy investment apartments and stuff like that. They then rent these apartments to say Eastern Europeans who are coming here to build more houses and get more loans. And the government is getting all this VAT and front money loaded in, and they think they're super successful and wealthy. But in the reality is, the real jobs and the real economy, the actual part of it that actually makes, they're going. And they'll go for sure once the low corporate goes. I think the slyest thing, and it didn't come out tonight, that the Europeans are doing is they can't get rid of this veto that we seem to have on taxation. We'll sell out on every bit of sovereignty, any kind of thing at all, but we'll hold this thing on taxes, right? And what they've actually decided is, okay, you can have your tax rate at 12.5%, but here's the rub: we're going to change the way we calculate how that tax should fall. So if you're Dell Computers, right, and you're selling a mass computers, and you're selling 2% of the computers you make in Ireland, you're selling them here in Ireland, you can have your 12.5% profit tax rate on those computers. But if you're selling 28% of the Dell computers to Germany, you'll pay the 32% rate. And I think once the EU gets that in through the back door, we just won't see too much foreign direct investment in this. There's just no reason to locate here. We're an island and everything will have to be transported out of here. And if you look at it, even like the issue of Shannon and things like that came up here, if anything, all we're becoming is a kind of a cheap, low-fare destination for, say, the Ryanair. That seems to be the future. But the actual kind of Aer Lingus, the people that actually carry goods and stuff out of it, they're actually getting out of Shannon. And it's always amazed me that people actually so casually voted for Nice 1, when in fact, as I mentioned to a number of politicians, that would have virtually gut Shannon for sure. And Shannon is hugely important to this region economically. So there's quite an economic argument, in my view, to be made against kind of deepening our role, or certainly anything that would threaten our low corporate tax rate. And I'm convinced that the passing of this treaty will see the end of that. It may not be, but at least if we vote no, we will give them pause for thought out in Europe, and we'll probably prevent them from actually basically dismantling the one last thing we have that keeps foreign direct investment coming in here. Okay, thank you very much.